In the 60s, when HDB embarked on a building program, we can build 100,000 units for 5 years. Real affordable house, 6,005 to 12,000 up to 1975. Now this bunch of people are aging now. The last statistic was last year was about 330,165 years and above, and by 2030, the famous 1 million number. So what I suggest is that for next 20 years, we must start building affordable housing. Let's start with, like HDB in the 60s, 100,000 units for next 5 or 10 years by 2020. And we really price it affordable, 100,000 to 150,000 for 45 to 55 square meter apartments and that. And also this will help those working class Singaporeans living in aging HDB housing that's now 50, 60 years old, so that they can, let's say, they get at least 450,000 out of it, reverse mortgage by HDB. You pay 150,000 for the SA apartment, you got $300,000. Just to protect them, why not make them take out $120,000, put in CPF Life, so that every month they get $600 per month on it. Okay, this will really help affordable retirement home for Singaporeans on that. Okay, my last question is a bit naughty, addressed to SM directly. Now, in the 1980s, that time Mr. Danambalam was embarking on a densely packed HDB estates. He said the price HDB house tied to the price of land nowadays, and we go away with the 60 big football field all close to each other. Okay, one question was that time asked to SM, will we be like Hong Kong? And your reply, I remember, you said no, we will not build rabbit hutches in Singapore. Now, what's your opinion of shoebox apartment today, 300 to 400 square feet? So in your year X report next lab, you say HDB may build 70 to 110 story apartment to make full use of the land. Are we heading toward the direction in the next 10 years? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Vivian, you want to answer this? I'll answer the shoebox part.
Okay. Our concept for aging is to build a city for all ages. That means Singapore will be a great city for families, a great city for the young, a great city for people who are in their business prime and looking for opportunities, as well as a great city for those who are older. All right. So the first point I want to emphasize is that Singapore must continue to remain home for all of us throughout our entire life cycle. The next thing is, do we believe in aging in place? So what does aging in place mean? It means that for most of us, there is a certain comfort, emotional comfort, from a sense of familiarity. Right? I grew up in this place, or I grew up in this home, my wife and my children are in this home. And as we grow older, I think many of us would like to continue to age in the same home. Now, that's nice to have, I think, at an emotional level, but there is a practical challenge. If our children move out, will our homes be empty? Will there be more room than we need? And that's where, for some people, both for practical reasons as well as financial reasons, may say, no, I want to downgrade. I want to move to a smaller home. And in the case of Singapore, there are many options. Right? If you bought a flat many years ago, you would almost certainly, at this point in time now, have significant capital appreciation. For some people, they want to say, well, how, as I grow older and I've retired, how can I tap into the value of my flat? And even for that, they have options. You don't always have to sell your flat. You can rent a room or 2 rooms out. Or sometimes, you may decide to rent your entire flat out. Whilst you go and live, perhaps you rent a smaller place, or you live with your children or relatives in another place. So I'm saying that even for tapping the equity in your flat, you have options. Then the next thing is, if you want to move into, say, a studio apartment, and you know the HDB has been building studio apartments, and the studio apartments are carefully designed to be elder-friendly. I don't know how many of you have actually visited the studio apartments. You look at the layout of the toilet, you look at, their gentle ramps, there wouldn't be a step like we have down here. There's call buttons, everything is within reach and convenient for someone who, as he's growing older, physically and his eyesight and his hearing may not be so optimal. Your question, and I think is a most valid question, is what about affordability? And this, let me repeat what the Minister for National Development has said, that we will continue to ensure that the vast majority, so in the case of Singapore, I think the estimate is that about 80% of all Singaporeans should be able to afford at least a 3-room, a 2 to 3 room flat, using his CPF, to pay off the mortgage every month. That means we're not taking away from your take-home pay, right? So HDB's objective is to ensure affordable housing for the vast majority of people. Even for the low income, you would have heard recent announcements that Minister Ma made in Parliament just a week ago, where there are additional grants given for low-income Singaporeans. And these grants can be quite considerable. I think it can go up to about $60,000 or $70,000 cash, which is put into their CPF account, which they can then use to buy a flat. So that the vast majority, 90% of us, are owners rather than tenants in a flat. That way you have a hedge against inflation. That way you have a stake in the success of Singapore, especially for the future. And more importantly, you have options when you grow older. You want to move in a smaller flat, you can rent, you can buy either another HDB apartment, or you can buy a studio apartment. If you need money, again, you can find ways to liquidate some of the equity that you've built up over the years. As to maybe, you want to handle the other question?
Minister has answered the question already for me. We are not going the way of Hong Kong. We are building smaller studio apartments for 2 reasons, which Minister mentioned. One is to enable people who own bigger flats to downsize, because they don't need the bigger flats. Children have grown up and they have gone away, so they move into the studio apartments. And secondly, the studio apartments are custom-made for older people. They are not just smaller units, but actually, they are specially built in such a way that the older Singaporeans can adjust their own lives to that kind of specially made studio apartments. So we're not going the way of Hong Kong. And we have public housing, we therefore can plan on the basis of building up smaller apartments, but nevertheless still beautifully designed and located so that you don't get the crowdedness.
Yeah, I think I would like to add that for us, really, we're quite different from Hong Kong because in our public housing planning norms, there's requirement for green spaces. And in fact, in the new plans, my understanding is that actually there is a plan to include more green spaces. So although we may build much higher, intensity-wise, the green spaces is there, is provided for, and we're trying to improve that further even.
It is possible that in future we may have retirement villages outside Singapore. The Malaysians are very interested in developing IDR, Iskandar Development Region, and they would like Singapore to cooperate in building a wellness center. The wellness center would include retirement villages, not just for Singaporeans, but for Malaysians, Singaporeans, Japanese, and all those who want to buy property in Malaysia. They've got the land, so if you have this retirement village by people who can afford to buy homes over there, you're actually developing the land. But this will be just a component. The wellness center is much more than this. You have hospitals, you have golf courses, tennis courts, spas, and so on, plus other activities which make people feel that they want to go there because it's a wellness center. So in future, it is possible. We are working on this with the Malaysians to develop the wellness center. And certainly this can be an area where we can also develop for ourselves, for them, and for Johor.
I think the key thing is to remember that give people a choice. Right? HDB commits to keeping housing affordable, and that's unique in the world. No other country has a public housing providing accommodation for 85% of the population. But that enables us to give assurance that housing will remain affordable. Second, to encourage as many people as possible to become owners so that you have an asset for the future. And third, give you as many options as possible as you age so that you can you can choose the appropriate lifestyle and appropriate accommodation that you need. So as long as we can do these three things, right? Affordable, keep people asset owners, and give people a choice. I think the fundamentals of our housing policy are on the right track.